Welcome back to the Line Podcast. My name is Aaron Alexander. This is a place that we bring together the world's leading experts in all things health and wellness to help you optimize your mind, body, and movement. Today's conversation is with my homeboy, Shawn Stevenson. Shawn is the author of Sleep Smarter. He's also got another book coming out that we discuss throughout this conversation. It's referred to as Eat Smarter. I'm really excited to get to read it. I haven't checked it out yet, but I'm sure based off of knowing Shawn that it's incredible. And he's rad. He's a best-selling author. He's a nutritionist. He is a mad scientist of all things that make your mind and body function better. And he's just a genuine, authentic, incredible man, father, friend, and good human being. So I'm really excited to get to share this conversation with y'all. I'm here in Tulum, Mexico presently, and I am about to take off here in a moment and get to start my advanced scuba diving certification. So I'm going to be diving in some cenotes, which are like these underwater caves, do some reef dives. If you guys have the opportunity, I highly recommend you try scuba diving. If you are interested in like breath work or mindfulness practices or whatever, I can't think of something more effective for tapping into those parts of you. I don't know that I've encountered something that is more profound in its ability to drop you into your breath. I mean, your breath literally is the thing that controls your elevation. When you breathe in, you ascend. When you breathe out, you descend. And then you kick your little flippers, and that's how you move around the ocean. Wanted to share with you guys, people have been super excited about the new strength training equipment that we produced called the Align Strength Kit. It's pretty rad. We essentially integrated all the things that you would need for a home gym in the form of resistance bands. So we put together over 200 pounds of resistance in the form of 4 different sized resistance bands, and then we also include a hip band, a door anchor, and then there is a video instructional guide that goes along with it. That's what I've been traveling with. So if you jump over to the Instagram The Line Podcast, you'll see me doing different workouts with people on the beach and all that, in the hotel room, and it's been my absolute saving grace on maintaining good fitness while I'm traveling. It's really great for decompressing joints. You can hang, one of my favorite moves is to hang the orange band up in the highest setting in the door, so on the top of the door, and I'll wrap that around my hips, and then I'll drop my hands down to the ground, essentially go into a down dog, while the band is decompressing my hip joints and my lower back and sacrum, and it is freaking amazing. And so you can find that at alignband.com. That's ALIGN band.com. And go for the strength kit is my recommendation. Includes everything you need to make any exercise you would do in a gym. You can do it at your home, at your hotel, at your office, wherever you need to be. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thanks for reviews on iTunes. Thanks for doing you. I hope you devour this conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Here we go. Back to the scheduled programming with Shawn Stevenson. This is all Align Podcast purview.
Align.
We're in the Align. Whenever I say align, I always reference it back to like aligning your tires as opposed to anything like spiritual or physical or anything like that.
I like that.
Just to kind of keep it, throw a little curveball. Like remember, align your tires.
Yes.
Just keep it whatever. General alignment.
Keep it whatever.
Keep it whatever. I don't want to be too dogmatic. Whatever you want to align, you could do that.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Social dilemma.
Yeah. Wow. You know, this quarantine experience, this pandemic, this shutdown experience can be defined by its documentaries.
Yeah.
It started off.
Netflix knows how to feed your consciousness.
There was the Tiger King.
Yeah.
There was the Tiger King phase of the pandemic, right? It was kind of new, it was like strange, right? Like, what is this? It's Exotic Joe, right? Yeah. Then we moved into the demand that people want. It was like, we're going crazy. We need that Michael Jordan dynasty documentary.
It's true.
Right? And ESPN delivered, you know? So that was inspiring. It was uplifting. It was great to see behind the mind of somebody who has impacted the culture so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved into the real stuff. You know, now we're looking at social dilemma, and is just bringing to bear something that we all know this. These are those things that we know, but we don't really want to look at. And the impact that social media is having on our development, and especially having on our children, it's concerning. But the thing is, the medium itself isn't good or bad.
Right.
It's how you use it.
Yeah.
But we oftentimes don't realize that it's beginning to use us in a sense. We don't really see when the transition starts to happen when you can't do without it.
Yeah.
And that's problematic for sure.
What was surprising about that documentary for you?
Not much, actually,
Yeah.
because, I've been looking at this data for quite some time. But the thing that was hit me moment is when they brought up the statistics with suicide with children.
Self-harm and suicide, adolescents.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was just really heartbreaking. And the ages that it's happening with. Yeah, that was probably the most alarming part.
I wonder where and if there is a bridge between screen addiction and nutrition. Is there some way to jump into that from a nutritional conversation?
All of this stuff's connected. It's aligned. What's fascinating is, my first book, Sleep Smarter, that came out in 2016, I believe.
Yeah.
And it really ushered in, it was a part of a big shift in culture. And one of the things that I talked about in the book was this really fascinating study that was done that found that for every hour of sleep lost each night, it led to 20 minutes additional of what was called cyber loafing the next day, right? So each and every hour of disrupted sleep, we tend to just, what we call these, quote, just checks. Like, let me just check my phone really quick. And we tend to do that a little bit more. And I've seen it happen in my own life. If there's, traveling, something going on, I tend to have very good parameters around my device, but I'll just pick it up. And if you're not aware of it, you'll just pick your phone up and immediately tap on that app. And you're into the domain, you're in the funnel. But just a couple of little simple things is like moving that app from the front of the page. But our fingers are quick too. So you could, even if you hide on the 5th page, you could and jump right into that rabbit's hole. But sleep deprivation, number one, first and foremost, is one of the things that it brings down our ability to self-regulate. And UC Berkeley did some really great brain imaging studies on this, and they looked at what happens in a sleep-deprived brain. And the part of the brain, the more executive prefrontal cortex, is responsible for distinguishing between right and wrong, social control. With social control, that part of the brain starts to go cold. And the part of the brain that gets lit up is the amygdala, which the amygdala is really just about self. It's really about emotion, and what feels good right now and staying away from things that don't feel good, right? It's a more primitive part of our brain, but it's valuable. But when that part of the brain, we call it an amygdala hijack, when that part of the brain takes over and jumps into the driver's seat, man, it's hard to control yourself. And so often we're trying to pit our willpower against our biology. And eventually your biology is going to win out. That's just the nature of the game. So definitely sleep deprivation, it plays into it. But then we can go into the domain of how does our nutrition affect our sleep. And this is a really fascinating place.
So where do we go with that? On the way here, I was listening to a thing about movement and food and all that stuff, and there's this ongoing circle of, we're moving to eat, and then we're eating to move, and then we're moving to eat, and then we're eating to move, and so in modern culture, we're missing out on the whole movement portion of that conversation. We're just eating to eat, to eat, to eat, to eat. So I wonder what's the relationship of the nutrition to sleep side?
Yeah. Well, I think that the conversation starts with understanding that a big part of our sleep experience, we think it's all in our head, but a big part of our sleep experience actually resides in our gut. And so one of the studies that I highlighted in my new book found that there's about 400 times more melatonin in your gut than in your brain.
New book, Eat Smarter.
Eat Smarter, yeah.
When does it come out?
So it comes out December 29th. We're going to end 2020 on a high note.
Very cool. Put this out around that time frame.
So here's the beautiful part, is that we know there's a kind of succession. None of our hormones operate in a vacuum. Everything's connected. It's aligned. And serotonin is kind of a seed to growing melatonin. It's a precursor. And it's well noted. A lot of people throw this statistic around, but about 85% of your serotonin is in your gut too. Right. And serotonin is well noted to be this kind of feel-good neurotransmitter. Like when serotonin is doing its thing, your receptor sites are working well, you tend to be in a much better mood. But it's also required to build your most prominent sleep-related hormone. But melatonin is a lot more than just sleep, by the way. It's really it's a big regulator of your overall circadian rhythm. So it is a master hormone that regulates other hormones. And so if that's thrown off, the whole thing's thrown off. But anyways, when I went to college, I was taught melatonin is produced in your pineal gland. That's it. Yeah. Next subject. But you can actually have your pineal gland removed. I don't recommend it, by the way. But what they did was, if you have a pinealectomy, you still have melatonin being produced by these enterochromaffin cells in your gut. So you're still making melatonin, and again, most of it is in your belly.
Why would somebody get a pinealectomy?
I don't know,
Some type of tumor or something around the pineal gland?
Of course, there's a lot of stuff is done with.
That means they were a witch in a past life, I'd imagine. They developed it. That's what that means.
Damn witches. Yeah. But we think we're so evolved in science right now, we're still doing very archaic things. Oh, yeah. But it was just a couple decades ago that it was common practice.
What do you think, foreshadowing or looking into the future, what do you think is archaic in the present moment?
Oh, man. You want to open this door?
You can if you want. You can go any door you want.
Okay. I think it's important for us to understand where we are right now, because I don't think a lot of people realize this, and I make it an effort to remind us of this. Most of my friends work in healthcare, nurses, physicians, chiropractors, nutritionists, wonderful people, many in conventional medicine, who've kind of started to lean into functional medicine, integrative medicine. But I also have, thousands upon thousands of folks who follow my work who work in the ER, they work in coding. These are really good people, some of the best and brightest, we know this. But the way that our current medical system is structured, right now, everybody knows this, what I'm about to share. Number one, the biggest cause of disease, the number one killer of Americans every single year is heart disease. Yeah. Well-known statistic.
It was 565,000 or something around there?
Somewhere around there.
Big number.
Big number. A lot of souls, a lot of lives lost. Number two is cancer. Number three is something called iatrogenesis. Iatra meaning physician, genesis meaning created. Yep. The number three cause of death in our country every year is death due to medical error. Going to see your doctor, unfortunately, is a dangerous thing in our country, but we don't seem to realize this. And I just shared a report the other day. There's about 100 million prescriptions filled every year for medications that end up getting recalled. So these are things that are consumed, ingested, injected, and
poured back into the environment, back into the rivers, back into the ground, recirculated. Doesn't just go away after that person. It continues in the cycle.
One of the most fascinating studies that's also in Eat Smarter talks about our water system and how, testing from California all the way to New Jersey, this was 40 million Americans' homes. Coming through your faucet, you've got residues. And again, these are microscopic amounts, but it's still there. Antidepressants, chemotherapy medications, statins, coming through your sink. This stuff doesn't just disappear, So what I want people to really understand is that even though these are really good people, they're operating in a system that doesn't work. It's amazing for emergency medicine. Let's be clear about that. Absolutely phenomenal. Even emergency medicine, emergency drugs to get somebody out of pain, emergency medication if somebody's not able to breathe, the list goes on and on. But for chronic diseases, it's absolutely atrocious. And I don't have to make it up. Everything continues to go up every year. Heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity. Nothing is getting fixed. And yet the system continues to operate as is. And as a matter of fact, it keeps doubling and tripling down on itself. We had about $4 trillion spent in healthcare last year. $4 trillion. And I don't think we can wrap our minds around how much that is. That's like 999,999 billions plus one more times 4. It doesn't even make sense. And yet nothing is getting fixed. And this is the same system that we're betting on to fix the current crisis that we're in. It's not that the system is broken, it was designed this way from the inception. It's based on a pharmaceutical model. And there's so much money in play. And even though I'm gonna lean into this one more time, these are really good people, but if you take really smart people and you teach them the wrong thing, they become world-class at teaching the wrong thing.
So do you think that relates back to like the origins or like the Rockefellers and kind of buying out the pharmaceutical industry and pumping billions of dollars into lobbying for that and kind of changing the narrative? A question that comes up with me with all of this stuff around what's happening in the current events, sometimes the conversations that I hear from either side, it sounds almost like this like Marvel comic book, evil villain type thing. And something that I'm kind of curious is like, one, like, does evil exist? Is that actually even a thing?
Yeah.
Or are all people inherently good and their intention is to do the right thing, but you can only do the right thing based off of the information that you have?
Yeah.
So I would just wonder like where the origin of all of this is.
I'm so overjoyed right now because these are things that I think about. Like I literally think about these things daily.
Yeah.
And I told you like I was doing a rehab, so I spent a lot of time just walking alone by myself with my thoughts for months.
Yeah.
And this was something I was really pondering a lot because I took on the belief that life is good, that we're all connected and that life is good. And I think it served me a lot. But then you see the things that are happening. Of course, you question, like, is that actually true? Does evil really exist? And at its core, I think that the concept of evil is a little flawed because I believe that people are inherently drawn towards each other. We're inherently drawn towards connection, towards love, towards protecting the people that we care about. And when we have this illusion that there's this other, of course, this enemy, it's you against them, that's when we start to get in some trouble. But the problem really is, and where evil, the concept of evil can start to expand, is when we're hurt. Hurt people hurt people. And we know this. So getting to the root of fixing this issue, how do we help people? How do we create humans? How do we develop and support humans to be the best possible, the best humans possible? And this is something that is, even right now as we're sitting here, there are millions of children who are being abused. They're in the conditions, much like I grew up in, where I go to bed at night and I don't have a level of certainty of what's gonna happen, even while I'm sleeping. There might be somebody get shot. There might be people in my own family who are fighting and breaking things and bloody. Like you don't know what's gonna happen, when you go to sleep. And so—
This is growing up?
This is growing up.
Yeah.
And so I'm carrying a level of PTSD that I don't even really realize. And I have to work through so much stuff to become the person that I am being in that environment. It's a fucking miracle, really. But it's possible for all of us because the template is still there. But what my tendency is going to be is to hurt people as well. So I had my versions of that, so it was with the ladies, and I was like in high school and college, like I didn't really consider the other side's perspective. I was just doing the thing that I was taught in my environment, so it's just like on to the next one. And man, I had to do a lot of work. Right before I moved here to California, I actually bumped into a girl that I dated in college. And she was this was like 18 years ago. When she saw me, she's shaking. And I'm just like, hey, how's it going? But she knows, she's also been following me as well. She's just like, why couldn't you be this person then for me? And, I apologized to her. Like, I was scared, I was lost. I didn't know those things, but humans, we tend to be, and this is a beautiful thing I'm going to share, but part of it is kind of cookie cutter. We tend to be a product of our environment. We can't help it, but we're also a creator of our environment. That's what makes humans very special. And the second part of that, though, we have to become aware of it. Most of us never realize that we can actually create our environment. Because we tend to operate in these bubbles, we think that people know this. We don't. I didn't know for a long portion of my life that there was a way out. When I met my wife, I lived in Ferguson, Missouri. I chose to live there. Like that was a good place. That was a good neighborhood, like a good apartment complex to me. But every day I'm going out my front door dealing with, it might be something with, just people in the neighborhood, police, just getting to college. Just that trip every day is a question. Like, am I going to get there? Am I going to get there unimpeded? Every day. But I don't realize it. I've just accepted it as normal.
Yeah.
So all of that said, man, I mean, there are manifestations of evil, like we can label it as such, but what it really boils down to is helping people to feel loved, helping people to feel safe, helping people to feel seen, our basic human needs. When those things are not met, that's when things can go awry. And another thing, a really good friend of mine, I'm so grateful that he's, in my life, Dr. Daniel Amen. He has the largest database of SPECT imaging, brain scans. And so often what we think are mental disorders, mental health disorders, are really brain disorders. Our brain can actually be hurt and injured, causing the behavior. And so we might see the outer manifestation of somebody who's like a psychopath, but they might have something broken in their, frontal lobe. There might be something blocked, or there might be, they might have had an injury when they're a child. Like there's so many different issues, and he has the data to affirm this. Yeah. And once we can help to kind of fix those issues instead of just throwing drugs at people, like let's actually get a peek at what's going on in their brain. And this is the beautiful part about medicine. That's the beautiful part about our advancement. However, if we take that technology and we have that as that's the accessory, and we're still rooted in, without that, psychiatry is very much like it was 100 years ago. It's based on a conversation, and based on what you're telling me, oh, you sound like you're depressed. Let me give you some antidepressant medication.
Sure.
But that...
And then I'm going to get paid on the back end. Even though I'm inherently a good person, there's still, when you bring finances into it, there's going to be some type of bias that subconsciously pops up. I mean, I'm sure you experience it all the time in relation to maybe sponsors or anything like that. It's like, oh, that's damn, that's that's the whole nut for the month, that sponsorship.
Yeah.
But is this incongruence with me?
Aligned.
Is it aligned?
Is it aligned, man?
There's a thing that you mentioned. So in relation to the origins of the, whether evil exists and such, it's still something I'm kind of contending with. And I think it's an interesting kind of philosophical question just to explore, does evil exist? If it is, what are the origins of that? But the thing that I think is really interesting that you were mentioning that I noticed in my own life is the tendency to kind of get deep enough into a relationship with another person and then kind of reach a certain point and then all of a sudden start wandering in other directions, which I think is very common, probably maybe masculine, feminine, I'm not sure, me trait. For you, was there any type of transition of sorts that allowed you to become more stable, content enough to create a family and have a beautiful wife and, not always be in that wondering state? Or are you still in a wondering state?
No, I'm not, man.
Okay, good.
And this is the thing. There's no judgment there, really, because there is a logical way of that, but there's also a psychotic version of that, because, many people, it's just seasons, but I think that I had a core already there. The earliest portion of my life, I lived with my grandfather and my grandmother, and they were an entity. They were the only successful relationship I've ever seen in my entire life. was them too. But it left, because I had that, it left an imprint. And I just always felt like I want that, like this feels great. That's where I had certainty when I went to bed at night.
Yeah.
That's where I had love. That's where I was celebrated, It's so many good and beautiful things. And so what really changed, man, it's never about the person. That's the thing people fuck up with. Like they think like the right person, then they're gonna change. I wanted to be different. When I met her, I was at a point of like, I'm just sick of being like this, because I was recovering from a health issue myself. And that health issue required me to not just get physically healthier, it required me to change the way I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because I was asking habitually these questions. In the brain, it's like a servo mechanism. There's this incredible aspect of the human brain called instinctive elaboration. Anytime you pose your brain a question, it has to answer. It's the nature of how the brain works. And so I was habitually, for the 2 years that I was dealing with this like massive spinal degeneration, arthritis of the spine, basically, I kept asking, why me? It was just on repeat, like, why me? Why is this happening to me? And I would keep feeling and having these insights come up about how much I sucked as a person. Like on the surface, things are okay coming from where I come from. Like I have my own apartment, I have a car, I look relatively, decent.
Yeah. Yeah, the bullet points were checked. The boxes were like, okay, cool. I should be happy.
Things should be okay, but the quality of my character was not in alignment with the person that in my core, like I knew myself to be. Like I love people. I want to help people. I want to see people win. I want to be an inspiration. I want to be a leader for my family, my brother and my sister. And I was doing none of those things. I'd really forfeited my health and kind of passed it over, but to circle back to that point, when I started to get physically healthier, I realized like a big part of the reason that I'm not well is my relationships and how I function in relationships. And I started to just see people, and I'm not that person though. I'm not a person that's like, well, let me put it like this. I didn't want to be self-centered, but the nature of where I come from, it's like a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Scarcity.
And so once I started to kind of open up, I realized like I can perspective take, And so I just kind of like taking a break. I was just focusing on, now I was healthy. I was helping clients. I was a strength and conditioning coach at this point. And I wasn't thinking about women or relationships really, And so that's when I met her. And she was like the complement for so many things in my life. And it just felt good. It felt right. And I remember, I don't know if I ever shared this before, but I remember me and her, we were dating, talking for a month or two. And then I got like a call at 2 a.m. from this other girl. You know the 1 a.m. call, it's a booty call. And I felt, when the call came in, I felt like dirty, is this who I am, who I was, And I remember telling her, it's the first time I've ever done this. I'm like, I think I was 24 at the time. And I was like, I met somebody, I don't want to talk to you anymore, And she's like, okay. And then we hung up,
Yeah.
And I was like, this is serious, But it wasn't that it felt bad because of what I, was interested in, which is my woman, my wife, my love. It was more so I did the thing I had never done before, and it was uncomfortable to do, But I later bumped into that girl too. I've had many bumping intos, man.
Do you think the origin of the wandering eyes thing, is that just a total natural, like hunter-gatherer, primal, tribal living thing that we should all be banging each other and raising each other's kids, and that's some like ancestral thread that's coming through your DNA? Or do you think that perhaps that comes from something of like some sensation of fear that perhaps maybe I'm just like spitballing, but maybe I'm like going into a certain depth with this other person that all of a sudden makes me feel more vulnerable, because if they leave me, then that's going to really hurt. So I'm going to kind of hedge my bets by becoming hot for other people.
Yeah.
Or another thing that's kind of coming to mind is perhaps you can ride a certain depth with a person but you can only go as deep as you're willing to go within yourself. Because ultimately love isn't about another person, it's about you. And the other person just kind of perhaps acts as some type of like kindling or flint or some type of mechanism to open up the love that was already within you before.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's you.
Yeah.
You know, and then we're together, we kind of do this kind of equation, chemistry, orchestra, dance thing. But your love is about you and my love is about me. And when we're together, we kind of play on each other's buttons. But perhaps you're only able to go as deep with another person as you can within yourself. And when you start to push against that boundary, perhaps you have this subconscious kind of push back of saying, oh God, like go bang somebody else.
Well, to answer that question, I totally 1000% agree with you that love is really about ourselves. But we have this very romantic concept, you know, because of media, you know what I mean? That love is supposed to look this certain way, it's supposed to feel this certain way.
And then it gets popularized and romanticized that like, I'll die for you, and just like, I'm nothing without you, and you're my other half.
You
it's
complete
like,
me.
I don't know if that's healthy.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
not
dangerous.
sure that's the right
It's dangerous.
way to,
You know,
right
but
narrative.
there are components of those things that we romanticize, we turn into their own entities.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a feeling of connection, there's a feeling of dependency. But what I encourage, and the only time my wife and I ever felt like we were on the verge of like not being together was when we were really working on ourselves. You know, we were both really doing a lot of, you know, just inner work, you know, a lot of meditation, a lot of just seeking, you know, I guess would be the popular term. And we found ourselves like at a little fork in the road. And it's just because we both believed that we should be happy all the time. And that was the problem.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Because that's pretend. That's a fairy tale definition of relationships and of life, period.
It's like a storm coming, hitting the beach is a failure.
Yeah.
Like, what has the tribe done? The gods. It's like, no, it's raining.
Right. Damn you, Thor.
This is great.
But man, like we see there's certain, you know, and not to discredit any of the work of the, you know, wonderful gurus who are doing work, but there's this perception that they've achieved this enlightenment or this happiness, and that's their eternal state. And the reality is very different from that. And me having like I've been around a lot of these guys as well, and the real ones will tell you like there are peaks and valleys, you know, in emotion. The difference is they're aware of it. The difference is they can play within all of it. The difference is your emotions and your feelings no longer define you. That's where the real work is. And so we were figuring those things out, but we kept on like, you know, I meditate for 30 minutes. You know, she's meditating, and then, you know, we see each other later, and then we have an argument. It's like, didn't you just meditate? Why are you so upset? You know? And it's just like we project and we want people to be the way we want them to be. It's very simple, so that I can be happy. Yeah. And it is literally just, it's torture. It's self-torture. And what really changed things for us was understanding that truly, like, my happiness is about me. There's certain things that I enjoy, certain ways of being. And there's certain ways that she enjoys and ways of being for her. And there are things that I add to her life, are conditions I can help to create to bring those feelings she wants more often, but I can't do it for her.
Yeah.
And that's the secret. You know, that's the real, you know, secret that shouldn't be a secret. And so even if when I create those conditions, which I have in many instances because I'm aware of them, it also feeds a need that we have too to serve and to love and to make somebody else feel special. But again, you cannot be dependent or reliant upon their response. Because, you know, 8 out of 10 times, she's going to have the response of joy that I want. But those other 2 out of 10, you know, I could be like, never do that shit again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's just this very selfish thing that we tend to carry, you know? But an enlightened relationship, an enlightened person, I believe, is just able to analyze and see those things. It doesn't mean that you stop them all either. It means that it happens and I become aware of it. Like, oh, I'm doing that thing, you know? And so right now, I mean, and I know this is not everybody, but I'm literally obsessed with her, but in a way that I choose. It's not an unconscious obsession. I've detailed in my mind all the things that I love and enjoy about her consciously. And I think that this is something very special when you can consciously tie yourself to somebody, where I know that I'll be all right without her, but I choose not to be. And I know that I can love. I know that there are other people that exist in the universe, because there is a phase early where I'm lying to myself, like, oh, this. And she even saw it. Like, I would teach classes, and then like some ladies would be, hitting on me. I'm just like, I literally am ignoring it. It's not happening. No, what are you talking about? But I know it's happening. There's other things happening in the universe, for sure, always. But I like her more. I enjoy her more. She is so much more valuable to me than any of that stuff.
Wanted to take a brief moment and thank a vital mineral referred to as magnesium. Magnesium is the only supplement that I will actually pay for with my own monies. I get a lot of different supplements in the mail from various different companies. Try this, try that. I don't really care about most of them, to be honest. I'm open to taking them, but it's not something I really care that much about. Magnesium is one of the only supplements that I will actually purchase. And that's why I teamed up with BioOptimizers, who make some of the absolute highest quality magnesium and supplements in general that you can find on the market. They are incredible. I've been working with them for years now. And magnesium is very important as a supplement, actually, because it's largely devoid within the modern day soil. So through various different farming practices, monocropping, and things of the sort, we have been stripping our soil of magnesium. So it's a very vital mineral to have in your body. It's helpful for the strength of your muscles and your bones, helpful for production of energy. If you're having issues with sleep, I highly recommend taking magnesium before you go to bed, regardless whether you have issues or not. Down regulation of your nervous system in general, starting to get those tight muscles, if your neck, shoulders, whatever it may be, is all tight and bound up. Take some freaking magnesium. It is helpful. And you get yourself a sweet discount on the Mag Breakthrough version of their magnesium, which contains all 7 forms of magnesium. Very supportive, very helpful. Go to magbreakthrough.com/align podcast. That's magbreakthrough.com/align podcast, ALIGN podcast. 10% off. If you don't love the product, they will give you your money back. No big deal. You got nothing to lose, everything to gain. Enjoy that. magbreakthrough.com/align podcast. Pow. What do you think it was in you that I'm under the illusion that we're all creating each other? So this whole experience is about you, and I'm just kind of this like dancer in your illusion, and it's the same thing for me, and we're kind of ultimately it's like we brought each other into each other's worlds. We kind of meet at this point. But I wonder, what was it about you that allowed you to create her? If you were to run that narrative, that's what we're doing.
Wow. Private dancer, dancing for money. So
I don't know that reference.
I'm pretty sure that's Tina Turner. Somebody's definitely gonna know what that is.
Okay.
So me creating her, so her becoming the person that she is?
No. Her being presented in your life. Because if you were chicken nugget eating whatever, dude, she probably wouldn't have been there. You wouldn't have created her.
Yeah.
If you want to run that, perhaps that doesn't make any sense.
This absolutely does. She is a representation of the very best of me. That's another thing.
But you had to do the work in order for that projection to come out of that.
Exactly.
Out of that little film projector.
There's always. I'm a scientist, but there's these things that we just don't understand, and I think that's what's so beautiful about all this. What's happening right now is now. Prior, I would have these phases of it, but now I'm just swimming in the beauty of how little we know. We don't know shit. Your top virologists, they know less than a fraction of a percent of all the viruses there are, or even about one single virus. We don't know shit. And the beauty is this unfoldment and this continuing to discover. But the problem when we start to think that we know everything, we have a level of authority. We should all be like babies, like eternal students, like little children, because we're just hairier.
Yeah, the authority is more like arrogance, I think.
Yeah, it can, of course, transmute into that for sure.
Yeah, I guess not always, but yeah.
So for her to show up in the capacity that she has for me, it's been this, okay, so my point being, I can't explain how intuition works. I can't mansplain that shit. But there's something we all have, and we know if something feels right or feels wrong. But for me, of course, I'm always looking into the logic, into the science. We do know, and Princeton University researchers found this out, when two people are connected, just even for, like we are, just in this space, and we have a certain level of rapport, our brains start to sync up.
Hearts too.
Our hearts sync up, right? If you look at heart math, oh my God, it blows me. The tube torus expanding from our bodies, we're intersecting.
Pretty cool.
We're sharing an energy.
Not to mention we're inoculating each other to each other's bacteria, and we're like breathing each other. Like we're becoming each other in a sense. We're a little bit more than we were before we walked in the door.
It's like we're working out together. Like our immune systems are doing a workout together.
Yeah.
You know?
And our emotional systems, and it's all tied up.
Yeah, it's powerful, man. It's really remarkable. So we know little bits and pieces, but the magnitude of it we don't get. And I don't think we ever will, because it's too vast, it's too beautiful, it's too enormous. But I felt something different. My intuition knew that she was that thing. And if she was here and she would tell you there's a certain song that came on, it was a Kanye West, Jay-Z song, and it just spoke to the potential. It's like an older Kanye, by the way, old Kanye song. But it just really spoke to the potential that we have within us. And she was coming to my apartment in Ferguson, and she broke down crying, like listening in the car, listening to it, because she knew that I was that. I didn't know this until years later. I played the song, she started crying. I didn't even know I didn't know who I was yet. I didn't know the power that I had yet. All I knew at that point was I just want to help people. I just want to help people. And her being able to see that in me, again, like these things help to kind of flower and usher those qualities out that need to be there. But she, being that person, she represents the best of me. She also represents, since the pandemic started, and again, like having so many incredible people in healthcare reaching out every single day, just like, thank you so much for saying this thing. Thank you for speaking up for logic and rationality. The reason I'm so good at this is that I'm willing to be wrong. I'm going into the data looking for, and it's a hard thing you gotta switch in your brain. It's like a switch you flip, because we all have biases. We all have biases. We all have beliefs on how the world is supposed to be. And those things are going to guide us, but you have to realize that there are other ways of being. There are other dimensions to it. And so I'm going into it looking at like, okay, what am I not seeing here? And let me go to the total other side of the spectrum and look at it from that perspective. But I still, of course, carry my core of just being human. And that's what I love about what you do too, because the humanity, the human thread of it all, the basic stuff is ever present. And a lot of the science right now is being called science. It's teetering on the ridiculous. It's like really getting off of our core humanity, And so the reason that I'm willing to be wrong is because of her. She has created so many opportunities for me to be wrong. It's amazing. It's amazing. I've apologized more like in the last 10 years than I did for like 30 years. You know what I mean? And it's a beautiful thing. But in the moment, of course, it's not always fun. Nobody's waking up like, you know what? I'm gonna be wrong today.
Yeah.
Like we're not doing that. Everybody wants to be right.
I think you kind of have to, especially like starting talking about the social dilemma and such, you almost have to question like, what are my opinions? And what does it mean if I am wrong? Because all of my opinions, we're all living inside of these little echo chambers. And if you say something in Siri's listening, or you type in, bicycle wheel into your Google machine, all of a sudden you're going to get plugged away with ads and all that. So you keep on, your attention is the most valuable commodity presently. And so you have all of these different search engines and social media mechanisms and such vying for that all the time. And so it doesn't give a shit about you getting correct information. Doesn't give a shit about truth. It's not malevolent. It's not evil. It just doesn't give a shit about any of the details. All that's minutia. It cares about your eyeballs. And so within that, it forces me to like step back and really come into a place of, right now, pleasantly, I'm kind of spinning my wheels a little bit in like a state of withdrawal from everything, because I value people from all sides of all the polarized arguments, but it's ultimately like making me step back and kind of question my own beliefs, and the beliefs that I think I hold the strongest. Those are the ones that immediately come under my scrutiny to the highest degree right now, because I'm like, okay, if I'm like this worked up, passionate about this thing, to me, I'm like, there might be some room for me to kind of miss logic, and so it's like being able to step back behind that. I think in relationship, which ultimately is what everything is about, and like with a partner, being able to step back and not be so attached to like the I, and be more kind of thinking of like the we. I guess it sounds kind of cliche, but if it's always this battle to prove your point, I guess my curiosity now, ultimately, I think I'm just very confused, but I'm like, what is my point versus what am I just being taught?
Yeah. Oh, that's just so good, right? It's so good. And this leads to something profound that many leaders, enlightened folks, quote, gurus have said, is just question everything, question your existence. And throughout time, man, philosophers, like people they post their quotes, all the time, but like really, have you really taken the time to just ruminate and process on what these statements are? Question everything. What the fuck does that mean? Like for real, like question everything. And the more you do that, the more you realize how little we know. And when I said earlier about imbibing a belief, one of the things we often don't realize as well is that we choose our beliefs. We choose them.
You're writing a book.
We can literally decide that, people are aliens. Every human is an alien. And I'm the only person who's originates from here or whatever. Like everybody else is like, they got an alien shit them out on a rock and like the sun hatched them and they're aliens.
I went through a phase as a teenager for like the span of a year where that was my perception. Not like a fully schizophrenic way, but just in like I just started seeing everyone as being strangers, which ultimately that's probably quite strange for myself. But I was like the idea of sex and laughter and like all of the things, I just saw it as just like, you're a bunch of neurochemistry and everything was like beaker, of a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of this and that. And everything was very like kind of this gray mute type sensation. So I kind of like lost humanity for a little while and perceived everyone as being essentially like alien. It's very interesting.
Wow. This is so fascinating because I did the exact opposite. And me operating from this kind of self-centered, very analytical thinking, my tendency in my thinking is towards like facts and figures, But I spent, I think it was maybe 3 months, everywhere that I went, every place, and I have this very specific scene in my mind of like going to a gym in St. Louis, Club Fitness, and seeing everybody as me, seeing everybody as an extension of myself.
Yeah.
We're all, connected. Like when people say this stuff, and the weirdest, craziest stuff would happen. When I remember this day going to the gym because there's like a resident tough guy, like the grizzly guy, and we've never interacted, never spoke. But when I carried this perception, there was a moment we actually like synced up.
Yep.
And he smiled, and we spoke to each other, and just in passing, it was just like, yeah, and I didn't, not saying that I didn't think much of it because I did later, but at the time, just like, he's a part of me, I love him, And there was also a time when I was working at the gym at my university, and something happened. This young lady started like flipping out and fighting with somebody, she threw a trash can, And I'm just like, this is never in all the years I've been in the gym has this ever happened, you know? But when it was happening, I was like, oh shit, I'm crazy too,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, that's me too. I have
Absolutely.
that same potential.
Yeah.
And
You're not that far from it.
man,
All you need is a little bit of mushrooms, you know, and your mind starts going like, oh, like I've had that before. I don't use a ton of psychedelics, but I think they're really like amazing tools. But I've had that before where, you know, a little half gram of psilocybin or something and starting to feel my, you know, self-identity, structure, belief, all the things that I kind of hang my hat on start to slip a little bit. And it's like, oh, when you just, there was something about like that. It's like all it took was this little tiny piece of fungus to cause my whole deck of cards to start to a little bit. And I'm like, oh man, the person ranting and raving on the street or any of that, like, I think that I'm way up here and I drive by them and walk over them and like, oh man, it's like, no.
Man, you know what? These are things that I just think about. I've never really talked about this, but in truth, if we really want to be honest about ourselves, every single person, and we'll tell ourselves that this isn't true. Every one of us is capable of the most disgusting, heinous,
Oh yeah.
atrocious, terrible thing. But at the same time, every single one of us is capable of the most beautiful, altruistic, courageous, wonderful thing. Every one of us. And if you can see that in somebody else, that person that you hate, man, it really starts to just break down. You can start to see, you can start to understand them. And that's where like connection can happen and change can happen, you know, but also being aware that you have that, we evolve from that. We evolve from that. And this is the most important conversation of our time, I believe, because right now, the biggest epidemic is our lack of connection.
Yeah, separation.
You know? But it's been building up for decades. We've slowly migrated away from each other.
Yep.
You know, I remember, you know, being a kid, you just have your house phone. And so when you leave the house, you're just gone. Nobody can call, you can't get in touch till you get back.
Right.
You know? And sometimes people are just out in the neighborhood, you know, maybe family member, and you're at home, and then the doorbell would ring. And everybody goes to, we're all pumped, like, who is it? Hey, you know, haven't seen you in a while. You know, it's like a joyful, now, if somebody rang the doorbell right now in the afternoon, right now, we'd be like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Why are you ringing my doorbell?
Crazy.
What's that? And our first thing we'll do is look at each other like, do you have anything to do with this? Yeah. You know, maybe if we're quiet, they'll go away, whatever. Right. Like we've just migrated away from each other, but now everything is really being brought to the surface. This is the beauty. This is the greatest time to be alive because we are writing history right now. This is a time our future generations will look back on. What that future looks like is up to us. That's why it's so beautiful. Because I know some people are like, no, this is fucked up. This is beautiful if we choose, you know? And that connection has been something that I've been doing a lot of work around for a long time, and I never said it. It was really the driving force for so many of the things that I've done, you know, because I've literally had a situation where I did a talk for like a Jewish community center in a very nice neighborhood in St. Louis, and the same day I drove to East St. Louis to a Reformed barbecue place on State Street, like one of the worst kind of rundown areas of East St. Louis, that because that woman who owned it and her husband came to a class I taught, they turned that place into a health food store in this desolated area. And I did a talk there. On the same day, seeing these totally different universes, these totally different dynamics, and seeing the thread that connects all of us. We all want the same thing. We all want to be loved. We all want to feel good. We all want to be healthy. But the environment that we've allowed to be created around us is just conducive. It is so supportive and even encouraging of sickness. Yeah. And our ability to connect and relate to each other, this is why I'm so passionate about it. Right now, there's so much civil unrest. There's so much, you know, polarization taking place. Like these extremes are being seen right now. And what people don't really understand is that, and I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna expand on it, is that people don't do well because they don't feel well.
Yeah.
Our ability to connect is dependent upon how we feel. Now, if we feel like shit, we can connect. It's harder. We can do it. We absolutely can make it happen. But when you feel good, it just makes the process so much easier. It makes it so much more graceful. And me being me, I went and dug into the data. Like, I've got to find out how this works because I know it's true. I've seen it firsthand in my life. I've worked with thousands of patients, impacted the lives of, at that point, hundreds of thousands of people. And I knew that this was real. And then when I looked into the data, I started asking the right questions again, that instinctive elaboration. It was right there in my face. And it's been there. Like, this stuff has been there in the research, but the stuff that should be making headlines is not the stuff that's making headlines. So one of them was, there's so many, but I'll just share this one. At The Ohio State University, the researchers wanted to find out, how does our nutrition affect how we relate to our significant other? This is fascinating, right? Like, this has been studied. So already I'm just giddy. And then I start to look into the data. And what they found is that when study participants had, basically going hypoglycemic, right? Having high glycemic processed foods, the easiest way to get to it, but having a big crash in blood sugar, the couples tended to fight more often. And it's just like, you don't say. And what that really leads to is the fact that when our blood sugar is unstable, it's not just that. There's this term now that's in popular culture called hangry, right? Hungry and angry.
I know well.
But this is a very real phenomenon that we just put a cute name on. But when your blood sugar is unstable like that, what happens? Cortisol kicks in, adrenaline kicks in, your biology kicks in because it's a survival response to get you back aligned.
That's why if you ever go to court for something, you want to make sure you go after the judge has had lunch. If you go in hangry, there's a statistically significant increase in the likelihood of you being convicted.
That's fascinating, and it's one of those things where we think we're doing the right thing, but when you are deprived of nutrition, your hangry representative showing up, and you don't really realize that it's happening. So often couples are getting into it because they're sleep deprived or they're hangry. And I have a checklist now. Like, if there's ever any of that stuff going on with my wife and I go through the checklist. Like, how was my sleep? Am I really stressed and I don't realize it?
Yeah.
Am I hungry? Is she hungry? How was her sleep last night? Is she overly stressed? Is something going on? It is healing. It's like the tools are right there, but they're hard to get to when you're upset. And so how this translates over into the real world, like I said, I've been working on this for several years, but just the past 2 years, writing Eat Smarter. And I embedded that into this book. It's so important right now, but you gotta give people what they want, like I told you before, so the first part of the book is dedicated to the science of food and metabolism, but in a way that's never been done in book form before, like taking people behind the curtain. How does your metabolism actually work? Like, where the fuck does fat go when you lose it? Like, and the problem was, like...
Don't you breathe it out?
Don't give away the secret.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
But the problem is that, publishers, agents, they're always impressing this idea, and I'm just paraphrasing it, that people aren't smart enough. They aren't smart enough to know that. Just tell them, eat this, not that.
Oh.
How has that done for our society? That doesn't fix shit. And so what I want to do is to eliminate all of the secrets. It's not complicated, it's just they make it complicated.
Yeah.
And so to take the complexity out of it, bring more joy and beauty into it and fun. And so taking people through that and like looking at what specific nutrients cause this enzyme related to lipolysis, right? The breakdown of stored fat. What nutrients actually make that process happen? Maybe these are important. Where do you find those nutrients? What's the best way to take the nutrients, right? What foods, of course, eat smarter. What foods are they found in? And so giving people all of that information in a way that's beautiful and empowering. But the real heart of the matter and the heart of the book is related to how food affects how we communicate with each other and affects our relationships. Again, just one of the studies was that Ohio State study. But even more profound, right now, seeing this civil unrest. And I love this study because, unfortunately, the individuals involved were not in a advantageous situation, but the nature of them being in that situation allows for a lot of control of the different metrics. And so Oxford University researchers used prison inmates to analyze and just take a peek at how does your nutrition affect your behavior and even your level of violence. So they took one group and they gave them higher levels of nutrition, just giving them additional vitamins, essential fatty acids. And then they had a control group who took a placebo. And so they tracked the data over a long period of time. So this was like several weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And after they compiled all the information, what they found was that the inmates who received the additional nutrition, the essential fatty acids, they had a 30% reduction of behavioral incidents compared to the placebo group. 30% reduction. But what was most fascinating was that they had a 37% reduction in violent offenses simply by having better nutrition. Now, again, we think that we're just out here managing ourselves. We think that we're managing our emotions and how we're responding. What if our nutrition is a huge key? Not even what if. These are causative factors, proof that when we're undernourished, overstressed, underslept, we have a tendency towards lower level behaviors. It is much more difficult to perspective take. It's much more difficult to have compassion when you feel like shit or when you don't have the nutrition that your body needs. And then there was another study that, mirrored it, because when you see something like that, another set of researchers, and this was published in the journal Aggressive Behavior. What a great journal name, by the way.
But a good band name.
Right. Aggressive Behavior.
Yeah, we're here. We're here to rock. Shooting out supplements, the crowd, melatonin supplements, getting them all well slept. We're done playing by 9.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But they basically redid the study and they came up with essentially the same results because it was so jarring for the researchers. Like, this cannot be right. To have that much of a decrease in violent behavior by just getting people better nutrition. Now you take that out into the real world, what does that look like? Right, we look at right now, folks are just, of course, like, whether we look at the dichotomy with police officers and African-American citizens, and we look at the wonderful people, again, who want the same things at odds with each other. And of course, there can be underlying beliefs and perceptions about each other for sure, but I'm not talking about that piece right now. I'm talking about the basic human premise of understanding and connection. It's much more harder to do. And if we look at law enforcement right now, and some of this is in the book as well, this is one of the most unhealthy fields of employment on planet Earth, by far. So we see twice the rate of depression, almost twice the rate of depression of any other field, highest rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, second highest rate of suicide. And nobody's talking about this shit. The extreme levels of stress, most top 2 sleep deprived positions as well. We have people who are unhealthy, policing people who are unhealthy. What do you think is gonna happen? Yeah. The likelihood of an incident or incidents continuously happening is astronomical. And we're not focused on the right thing. We keep trying to treat the symptoms. We keep trying to get people to change, to understand each other. It's hard to do when your shit's not working, when you literally don't have the nutrients your brain needs to process the data. We can do it, absolutely. People can take responsibility, you can understand. Humans are resilient, but it's just so much harder. And so I wanted to bring that conversation forward. And the funny thing is, I've been working on this for 2 years, and for it to come out right now, during this time, and to create a real initiative towards let's fix this situation. There's a pilot study done with police officers and firefighters in Reno, Nevada. And what they did was they just basically put them into a nutrition protocol, kind of like a lower carb approach, more real food approach, and also gave them coaching on sleep habits. And they ended up saving the department of firefighters and police officers like $22 million in healthcare expenses. Because that's another one of the issues we have to address. It's not just, hey, let's feed people, because the systems that control, they still have to make money. When you asked about evil earlier, that's the first thing that came up for me, is it's not necessarily that these people are quote, bad people or evil people. They're looking out for their shareholders.
Yeah, they're pawns of a broader mind, the mind of the corporation. And if you take the CEO out of, all of a sudden they go do ayahuasca in Peru for a weekend or something like that, and they come back and they're like, oh my God, like we're one love, Bob Marley. That's not going to just change the corporation. The corporation has its momentum. It's a huge Titanic ship. So it's not just an individual. It's like an overall. That's why things like podcasts are, I think, quite amazing, quite powerful. It's subtly lingering into people's ear canals and their drives and in their walks and all that. I don't think it's about one person or one like evil small group. I think it's more like we're being played by the machines that we created, in a sense. That's what Social Dilemma is all about.
Man, that sounds like Terminator.
Yeah. I'm trying to veer away from the Marvel comic stuff, because ultimately it's just a bunch of people trying to do their best.
So this is a beautiful intersection, because at the end of the day, I think that we tend to have these extremes in our thinking about fixing it as well. Like, people just need to take responsibility. You gotta lift yourself from your bootstraps. It's the individual, but it's the container in which this stuff is operating, where you might not even realize that's a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a thing. I didn't know what health was, what health and wellness. I didn't know the difference between water and Hawaiian Punch. It's just shit you drink. Yeah. That's it. You know what I mean? So we have to change from both directions, top down and bottom up. And that corporate side of what I was mentioning, I had to get face to face with this, because I've been working for years to try to get people not to go to McDonald's. Yet those lines are still around the fucking building. Have I really made a dent? Yeah, in some aspects. But the change possible that I can make, not even close, because I'm trying to fight something that is so ingrained every day in America. Prior to the pandemic, 84 million people get fast food. Every day, 84 million people are participating in that entity. How can I just come in and like pull the David Blaine that shit and pull the sheet out from under that system? It doesn't work that way. No. It has so much momentum. How do we do it? I had to get face to face. Like, I have to find a way to make that system better. And what it really boils down to, again, is money. How can we find creative ways that they can still make money, change the buying behavior, changing the options available for the folks that are going to be in those businesses? Not saying that's the ultimate fix, but let's do something there. And to see how they can actually make money has been a game changer. Right now, there's more and more businesses that are, quote, doing things the right way, like taking that fast food model and then making it like real food. Instead of this, patty from the factory farmed cow that's fed candy and shit. Yep. Like, you got the grass-fed, burger restaurants and things like that. So it's changing and they've taken a nice amount of the market share. And the more that expands, the more the fast food entities, the staples, start to change their behavior. Like, oh, we're losing market share. They started coming out with fucking kale shakes. Like, if we keep pushing that button down, that's how we can affect change there as well. So I took a look at every single dimension of the equation and put it all into this. Because the thing about a book is there's a shareability to it, there's a virility to it that even goes beyond podcasts. It even goes beyond, social media, the thing about social media is that it's here today, gone today.
Yeah, it's temporal.
Like literally it's like a swipe away. Whereas that book is like, I've seen the power of it. When my first book came out, when Sleep Smart came out, there had never been a successful book on sleep wellness before. And I know the guys like Dr. Michael Bruce, known as like America's Sleep Doctor.
Yeah.
He's written on the subject, but Sleep Smarter, what it did is it took a very niche topic and it made it attractive. I created the inroads of like, okay, so we know that we need to quote, get a certain amount of hours of sleep, but why? How does this affect the things people want? So I wrote about how does this affect your body composition? How does this affect your ability to perform at your job? How does this affect your relationships? And I made it sexy. And now it's like translated in like 20 different languages in different countries. And it's created this entire field. Like it's opened up the conversation where this is a real thing now.
Yeah.
It's always been a thing. It's helped us to be here today. Sleep, that's how we evolved. But now it's like something, it's on the tip of people's tongue now. But what I was really born to do, I'm a nutritionist. I'm obsessed with food. I got into this space. Food was my bridge. Like for many people, there's a bridge that gets them into health or that gets them back to their nature. For me, it was food because the food worked on me. Because food isn't just food, it's information. And so it started to change me. It started to change the thoughts I was carrying. It made the thoughts that I wanted to have easier to sustain. Because it's one thing to get a powerful message. It's another thing to be able to actually carry that frequency.
Yeah.
And you have to update your hardware. You have to update the mechanism in which that's carried. And food is such a powerful entity for that. So that's why I'm very passionate about this, man. And I love this statement that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And this is our time to really get this. This is our time to really get it. If we can get our citizens healthier, everything else becomes exponentially easier.
I love that. We got to wrap this bitch up. We got to go. We got to go over to the next channel, Model Health.
Yes, most definitely.
The thing that I was being reminded of as you were speaking about channels and such. I just did another conversation with a guy called. Do you know Whitney Miller's brother, Colin Ginn? He's lovely. He won The Amazing Race with his beautiful wife, Christy, and they're just like incredible human beings. And he was one of the main pioneers in the whole drone world. So like the antennas and all that, he's like an expert of creating antennas and signals and connections and that. And that was the kind of ongoing analogy that we were doing throughout the podcast episode, which people can go listen to that if they want to, is you need, in order to be able to capture certain signals and be able to put enough, I think he calls it gain or like electricity through it, you need to have the right antenna. And so the antenna, the mechanics or the hardware of the antenna itself dictates the channel that you're able to tune into. So something that you've said for years and years is like food is like the raw materials of your body. But I think that's an interesting thing. It's like thinking of the food that we're putting into our face / onto our skin / we're always absorbing everything in our environment, including thoughts. It's forming the structure of your antenna, which determines the channels that you're tuning into. So if you're like resting bitch face person, there may be like, oh, you're in channel resting bitch face where the whole world's tough. Everybody's against you. Everybody's other, and that's like perhaps maybe throw the recommendations in your book, Eat Smarter. We start to kind of go in from a nutritional perspective and hone that antenna in to get a more, I don't know, at least uplifting channel, I guess.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So I'm with that. Where should people go? So this will go out, I'd imagine this will go out around when the book goes out, would be my sense.
Yeah, no, this is the first time I'm even talking about it. It was with you, man.
Oh, good.
The very first conversation.
I love that. Thank you for doing it.
No, it's how things align, man, truly.
Yeah.
It's, you being here at this exact moment when so much has been going on in the world and I've been focused on this other thing over here.
Yeah.
And I just contacted you, just happen to be here. I think you're leaving today or tomorrow.
That's crazy.
So right now, people can pre-order the book. Pre-order the book. I put together a mini course. Now, I've seen so many of, friends of mine, book launches, and they'll give it's a free guide to,
Right.
No, we worked our asses off and created an entire mini course on specific foods and nutrients that are proven, clinically proven, to enhance the function, to kind of optimize the performance of your fat loss related hormones. And so people can get that right now. So go to eatsmarterbook.com and you can pre-order the book and get immediate access to that mini course. But most importantly, pre-order the book because it helps the movement. It helps to ensure that we're stocking the bookshelves.
Right.
I just found out that we're going to be in Target stores all across the country, which is an absolute miracle for a health book.
Yeah.
The book is that good. It has to be that good for that to happen. That wasn't on my accord except creating it. And so I'm pumped about that, but still, I want to create change. I want to create an initiative for change. Every single platform I'm going to get onto, I'm going to make sure that this message is heard and a message for change, for getting our citizens healthier. Finally, this is our opportunity to do it. And it's really our mission. I know it's yours as well. That's why you're here right now too, man. You're doing this work and it's so inspiring and seeing through the lens of movement. And you're somebody who walks your talk.
I do it for the chicks.
Chicks dig it.
I do it for the chicks.
They dig the flexi pants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's what it's all about, man. So again, people, please pre-order the book right now, eatsmarterbook.com. And I appreciate it so much. Be a part of the movement.
Dope. Love it. Thank you so much, man,
My pleasure,
for inviting me into your beautiful home, meeting your beautiful family, and sharing these moments, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my honor, man.
Let's go over to the Model Health Show.
Let's do it.
On to the next side. Thank you all for tuning in. Over now. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you did, por favor, share it with the world. If you got any specific insights, take a screenshot, take a screen grab, recording, whatever, and share that on Instagram. You can share it with me at Align Podcast, and you can also share it with Shawn at Shawn Stevenson. I find this a great way to remember specific parts of the podcast. Also, it's just a sweet, charitable thing to do to share these messages with your friends. Helps support the growth of this podcast, and I think it's a general good deed for the world. If you find good information, we appreciate you sharing it around. Finally, if you guys are interested in open up those sweet, sultry, supple hips of yours, we have the absolute perfect kit for you guys. We referred to it back in the intro. It's called the Align Total Strength Kit, and it includes all the resistance bands you'd possibly need that you would be potentially using inside of a gym. It replaces the exercises that you would do in a gym, and we break it down with an instructional tutorial guide on how to do so. It includes over 200 pounds of resistance. It's got a hip band. It's got a door anchor. It's got everything that you need to mobilize your joints, strengthen your body, align your parts, and it can be found at alignband.com, ALIGN band.com. Jump on the Total Strength Kit. It's the thing that I've been traveling with for the last month, and it is my absolute saving grace for maintaining fitness while I'm on the road. So all comes in a little backpack and 4 different resistance bands, hip band, door anchor, instructional guide. Bam! Rad stuff. I know you guys are going to devour it. Alignband.com. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for reviews on iTunes. Thanks for doing you. I will speak to you next week.